Profiting from horse racing is easy. There is no other sport where you can get margins of like 16 to 18%. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 10 of the methods I use and you can start applying to profit from horse racing. I'm Tony from Analyst, a full-time professional gambler. Let's crack on. Since it's that time of the year when we're transitioning from flat racing to jump racing, we should talk about all-purpose horses. These are horses that run in both categories, hurdles and on the flat. Now what you've got to look for in particular in this instance is horses that have either improved or regressed during this time. So you can see that from their handicap mark. So let's just imagine that a horse goes back to the flat and it's got a handicap mark of say 55, but it progresses to 75. That means it's actually improved 20 pounds on the flat since it last raced over jumps. Now if it can bring that improvement back with it, then obviously it can also improve over the hurdles. It can work the opposite way too. If you've seen a horse go from hurdles back onto the flat and it's actually regressed, it's dropped down the handicap ratings, then the opposite is true. Now this works for me and it's backed up by data, and that is that weight in smaller fields counts for more. So just imagine you've got a horse it's carrying top weight, say 12 stone, and another one's carrying 10.7. In a small field, that's going to be a lot more inconvenient than it would, say, if there was 10 runners or more. The reason for that is the race becomes tactical as opposed to be running honestly. And also you should start to think to yourself about the ground, right? If the ground gets really testing, then that weight counts even more. Now, if you're a little bit savvy with horse racing, then you're probably going to know this one, and that is qualifying races. Horses that are actually qualifying for a handicap mark. This is normally after 3 runs. That's when they're given an automatic handicap mark. So you imagine a gelding, right? That's going to be a racehorse for the rest of its life. So it is advantageous to get it down to a low starting handicap mark. So the trainer won't want to reveal all. There's some master trainers like Sir Mark Prescott. They're particularly good at getting the horses well handicapped, racing them as a 2-year-old over the long distances, and then obviously they're going to be well handicapped and they can keep stepping up in distance. But it also works over jumps. Getting a low handicap mark is advantageous, and it's going to give that horse the chance to win races later on. If a horse shows all of its ability on the first couple of races, I'm afraid it's doomed from then, because it's going to be rated much higher. This doesn't necessarily apply to fillies, but it definitely applies if you see the word gelding next to the horse's name. Ratings don't always mean much. Now let's just imagine that a horse is going into a maiden race or a novice if it's over jumps, and so let's just say it's got a mark of 80 on the flat, which is a pretty decent mark. You'd expect it to be really competitive in good handicaps, but it's going into a maiden for what is deemed a simple opportunity. Now, the thing is, right, the trainer, if he thought it was well handicapped, he would want to take that mark into a more valuable race, a handicap, and, win something of relevance, as opposed to going back to maiden company. So often what is the case is that horses are actually dropping into these lower grade races again with, lofty handicap marks, lofty ratings. They're not as good as the ratings suggest. Now what I would suggest to you is that you actually look at their last form, maybe the last couple of races, and you click on the horses that were around them, maybe the winner, the second, the third, and try to assess its rating from that. It could have been a one-off, but if it's badly handicapped, then they're going to revert to maidens, and you're probably going to be betting at lower odds than they should be, purely based on the fact that they've got a good rating and they shouldn't. Before we move on, I just quickly want to mention, if you're interested in a great tool for finding horse racing bets, then check out Tilt the Odds. This software applies data-driven analysis to find high-value betting opportunities. There's a free 14-day trial, so check them out. I'll put the link as a pinned comment. This is my big one. This is the one where I make most of my money, and that's when horses change codes, right? A lot of people, they look at the code that it ran in and they think that's what's going to happen, in the future as it's changed. So let's just give you an example. National flat races to hurdles. Hurdles to chasers. Now you're thinking to yourself, when a horse has shown a lot of talent over on the national flat, then it's going to transfer that to hurdles. It's not necessarily the case, and I tell you, particularly when it's not the case, is when you see horses hang around in national flat races for like ever. There was one the other day, raced 8 times in national flat racing in Ireland where it's allowed, before switching to hurdles. Absolutely terrible, couldn't jump, and that was pretty obvious to me. It's the same in the UK. They're allowed 3 times on the national flat races before they have to change, and for me it suggests if they are keeping them in at NHF for that period of time, then they're not going to be particularly good in hurdling. Now my specialist subject is hurdles to chase racing. If you see a horse that's hung around over hurdles for a long time, maybe 20 races plus, you know it's not going to be a particularly good chaser, or it's not a natural chaser, let's put it like that. But also you get those that have raced maybe 2, 3, 4 times, qualified over on the hurdles, got a handicap mark, they can bring it forward to the chasers, and they're going to improve drastically, because that's their sport, that's their future. They've got a nice handicap mark to get started, and they're going to be much better. So if anybody ever tells you to stay away with that, then tell them to get lost. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about ex-flat horses that go chasing. Normally it's going to be a mess, right? So like a really is a third choice. Now don't get me wrong, it's not the case for all of them. I mean, if you see it race maybe 4 or 5 times over hurdles, then switch to fences, and it raced on the flat as well, then it could be possibly a natural, but it's very rare. And the reason for that is chasing is a rhythm sport. It's all about 1, 2, 3, jump, come out running at the other end, and you don't lose momentum. You've got to compare it a little bit with boxing, getting a jab in the face, if they get too close to the fence, or if they're jumping out of rhythm or landing on 4 legs. And that's the difference. That's what happens to ex-flat horses. They tend to jump flat, they don't curve their back when they're jumping, and so they're not landing in the right position to sort of come out that fence running. That will cost them eventually, and even though the fences have become easier to jump over the years, with only like 2.73% maybe falling at the different tracks or unseating riders, right? The moral of the story is you've still got to jump the fence cleanly, and that's the difference. It doesn't really happen. So ex-flat horses, be very wary of them when they're starting their chase career. Check out our website, betanalyst.com, for free daily racing picks and much more. Now most of my big bets, they're planned in advance. I tend to have a strong opinion, and I'm going to send people out to get the bets on for me, or do them on the betting exchanges during the day, right? So they are planned. That's different to what I'm going to be discussing now, and that is hunter bets. That's when you're actually hanging on, maybe on Betfair, on the exchanges, and you're watching race to race, and you're going to be betting according to your feeling of the market at the time. Now if you're going to be doing this, obviously the margins are going to be a lot lower. Just for example, I'm probably getting like 5-6% on hunter bets, whereas my pre-programmed bets, they're probably getting 16% on the flat, and maybe 18-19% over jumps, right? So that's a different story. But I am also betting accordingly. I'll probably have 1,800, 2,000 on one that I really want to bet, and on the hunter bet, it's sort of maybe the 200s to 500s and so on, depending on what I conceive to be the value. Now the thing is, right, if you are doing hunter betting, then you've got to be really quick to react. You've got to watch that first race, you've got to watch the draw. Where did that horse win from if it's like a flat race? Is that tracksuit in front of the stake? How's it riding? Are the ground conditions like described? So you're going to see a lot straight after that first race, and then you can make your choices pretty quickly based on that fact, and start placing bets for later on, and be quick, because obviously others are seeing this as well, and that's when the market's going to start moving again, and you could probably lose the price. So you've got to react pretty fast if you want to do hunter betting. There's potential trading opportunities there if you do things right. Hunter betting is a good way to go if you want to fill in your day, if you've got a strong opinion about horse racing. But other than that, just focus. Now I have a strict rule when it comes to carrying extra weight, and that is never bet. And that's it, end of story. Now, don't get me wrong, you can find opportunities. Not all horses are weighted properly, so there are opportunities, but for me, it's like a golden rule. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. Right, so if a horse is out of the handicap, you'll see that OH at the bottom. That means if it's carrying more weight because the minimum weight is set, and the horse should really be carrying less, but it's got to carry that minimum weight, then obviously that's one of them. Maybe the jockey's carrying overweight, he can't do that minimum weight that should be carrying, and that could be another factor. But also, when a horse wins, they get what they call an automatic penalty. If it's not been reassessed by the handicapper during that time, then that's what they're going to get. It may be a £5 penalty, maybe a £7 penalty. Now, what you've got to look at is their future rating. So you imagine you see a flat horse and it's rated like 65, and it's carrying a £7 penalty for winning that race because it's been turned out quickly. It's got 72. But the handicapper is actually suggesting from Monday that horse should only be carrying a mark of 70, right? So you can see it's actually carrying £2 more than real. You want to see when your horse has got an advantage. So if it's actually gone up £5, but it should be going up £10 in future, then you've got a £5 advantage. But don't bet when your horse is carrying more weight than it should. Now, this is what I've been noticing for the last few years now. Odds compilers, the horse racing odds compilers, absolutely useless. You see them price the markets the night before, and if you look the next day, you can see the price is totally different, and by the race time, different again. But what they're good at is actually what they call odds bullying. Now, what they do is they're just moving the market up and down all day long, following each other. It doesn't really matter. Those prices are changing, and there's no relevance whatsoever in the actual current odds, right? So often by actually watching the markets, knowing when to bet, you can get ahead. Unfortunately, the exchanges nowadays, the liquidity comes much later, and that's when they start basically, watching the markets there and actually copying and pasting each other. But before that, it's absolutely all over the shop. So you can make a lot of money by not falling into their traps of this odds bullying. And by the odds bullying, what I mean is that they keep changing the odds to actually force a bet. So you imagine that you're seeing like 10 to 1 across the board, and then they reduce it to 8 to 1. You're thinking, okay, jump in quick because it's going to go 6 to 1 on the next show. And it might go 6 to 1, it might go 5 to 1, and then it will start going out again, right? So, this odds bullying, that seems to be the new method that the bookmakers are deploying, and you can't, be bullied by what they're doing, right? So just bear that in mind. Now, the final one is I want to pick up on trainer's trust, whether you should trust a trainer or not. Now, a lot of them nowadays, they do what I call factory training. So that means they don't even know the name of the horse. They probably just see it over there. It's delegated to a couple of riders, and they're the ones that have got to actually improve it. And then you've got the people in the office who are finding these races, right? So these type of trainers I don't like at all. So Ian Williams would be one of them, or Gordon Elliott. But just going back to Ian Williams on the flat, if you look at Ian Williams, he's got minus 26%. If you bet every one of his horses to £1 at SP, you would lose 26%. There's others that deserve your trust, like the Owen Burrows of this world. He's in positive territory. If you put £1 on each of his blind at SP, you would actually have profited. Now, there's a few trainers that fit into that category. They really place the horses well, but you've got the impression that with these factory trainers, they're more into the sort of throw enough shit at the wall and hope some of it sticks, and I'm afraid it's not a good way to go. So you've got the racing post, you've got all the stats there, you've got all the data. Click on the trainer's name, have a look at the data, have a look at what they're producing, because some trainers are so inconsistent, then you need to stay away from them. So that's a wrap. We haven't done horse racing video for quite a while, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you get something out of it. But these are ways I made money, and I'm making money going forward. So, just go through them in your head. Maybe you can't understand them all. You can ask questions in the comments if you have any. But other than that, focus on getting things right, taking control of your own destiny, getting more of an understanding. Use those videos, go over to At the Races, Racing TV, start watching the replays, and you'll soon get the understanding of what I mean. Also, get deep into that form book. It's all there. It's like the Bible, the information's all good if you know what you're looking at, right? So that's it. You're through to boot camp again. We're going to see you in the next one soon. Take care.